لا من يجمع المال ويلقى فيه أهوالا سنون العمر ماضية وكأس الموت قد سالا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Dear beloved viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome once again to this program which we talk about wealth in Islamic perspective and the trial of wealth that this ummah has. In the last episode, we were talking about wealth consumption, income, and how to spend your income as a Muslim. And we mentioned various verses which informs us that one of the objectives of a Muslim to spend his income is to be able to consume or to be able to utilize things which are lawful and things which are good according to Sharia, according to the dictates, to the guidance of Islamic law, or to the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet. On those verses which we discussed in the previous episode, we ended up highlighting some of the lessons that we learned. And one of the lessons we mentioned that we learned from those verses is Muslim is allowed to consume or to spend his income or his wealth by acquiring good things which are permissible and not good things which are impermissible. Another important thing to bear in mind when we consume our wealth, when we spend our income, is to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever good thing that comes out of spending. So if you are buying something, that good thing that you are getting, be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that. If you are paying for a service, you paid for, say, transport. You got a taxi, you spent on it, or you get an Uber, you spent on it, took you from here to there. It's a nice one, okay? You have to be grateful, because otherwise you'll have struggled to walk from whatever place to another place. But now God gave you means and income, and He gave you a means of transport which is comfortable, which is good to take you to one point to another. So we should be grateful. And we concluded then by mentioning a very motivational hadith, for us to be thankful to Allah. And in that hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Inna Allah la yarda." God is pleased. God is pleased with a person إذا أكل الأكلة أو شرب الشربة أن يحمدوا. Allah is pleased with a person when he eats or when he drink, he expresses gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those were two lessons we talked about in the previous program. Another lesson which we continue today bi'ithnillahi ta'ala is we are allowed to eat and drink, but don't waste. This is very important. Don't waste. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in chapter 7 verse number 31, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا وَلَا تُصْرِفُوا إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. That eat and drink, but don't do it extravagantly. Don't waste. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like those who are wasteful, those who are extravagant in utilizing these good things which He has given us. So a Muslim should be very careful on wasting. And insha'Allah ta'ala, we shall discuss about this topic on israf in detail in these programs that follows. Another lesson that we learn from various verses in the Quran is, once we have consumed, you have eaten, you have enjoyed your good drink, what next are you going to do? Because now you have eaten, you have an energy, you have enjoyed a drink, you have some form of an energy. What are you doing with that? Are you using that energy to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or use that energy to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So this is very important. We learn this point, or we get guidance on how to use our energy. In chapter 2, verse number 60, Musa alayhi salatu wassalam informed his people, informed his followers, and of course we learn from that. He said, كُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا مِنْ رِزْقِ اللَّهِ وَلَا تَعْثَوْا فِي الْأَرْضِ مُفْسِدِينَ. That eat and drink Allah's provision, and do not act corruptly, making mischief in the earth. That a Muslim, when you consume good things, you express gratitude, you must avoid wasting that food or that drink. You must also avoid utilizing that energy which you got out of the food in doing things which are prohibited in Islam. This is a very important lesson we also learn in this particular verse. So even though we are allowed to utilize wealth in buying good things, but as you can see, there is an obligation. There are responsibilities that we are supposed to fulfill. Types of good things of life. But before I go to that point, let me refer to some of the scholars on what they said with regards to eating what is lawful and spending on what is lawful. One of the scholar, which is Abdullah, said, "An-najat fi thalatha," success, which we all like to be associated with success. He's saying success is on three things. Number one, akal al-halal, to spend your money on things which are permissible, to eat something which is lawful, and generally to spend your money on what is lawful. Success is on three things. One, spending on what is lawful. Number two, ada'il fara'id. Success is also on you fulfilling your obligations to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have an obligation to pray, for example, which is farad, which is mandatory for a Muslim to pray. So success is also in fulfilling what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mandated, has asked us, and has required us to fulfill, to do. And success on the third point is wal-iqtida'i bin-nabiyyi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And success is also in following the footsteps, the sunnah of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So success is on those three things. Now let us clean our brains, because we are bombarded with so many stories on what success is. But this scholar is cleaning our brains that, oh, a believer, a Muslim, success to him is one, spending his income on lawful things. Number two is on fulfilling obligations to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number three is following the footstep of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is what success is. Another scholar, Sa'id bin Yazid, rahimahullah, said that خمس خصال بها تمام العلم. By having 5 traits, or by having 5 characteristics, it makes you a complete scholar. Alim, tamma, tamamul ilm. It completes your knowledge. By having 5 characteristics, you become fully knowledgeable person. Number 1, ma'rifatullah. To know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to know that there is God, and that God has rights over you, and so on and so forth. Ma'rifatullah, to be God conscious. Number 2, ma'rifatul haqq, knowing the truth and living, abiding by the truth, leading your life and basing your decision based on the truth, not on falsehood, following the truth rather than falsehood. Number 3, ikhlasul amalu lillah, to do things sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 4, wal amalu ala sunnah, and to do your deeds based on the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To do things by observing how the Prophet did them. And number 5, wa akalul halal, and consuming your income on things which are lawful, which are permissible for you. Now, having these characteristics, it makes you a fully complete person, a complete knowledgeable person. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to have these characteristics. Now, types of good things of life, of course, it can be meals. We are allowed to consume meals which are halal. Of course, good things in life could be dress, clothing. But of course, there are certain clothing which Muslim, especially male, are prohibited from using them. We'll come to that, inshallah. And then, of course, a good thing is having shelter, a house. Also having a good means of transport, having a good husband, having a good wife and offspring, okay? And so many other good things are of various types. So a Muslim, in short, is allowed to consume spend his wealth on good things in life. But bear in mind, avoid waste. Bear in mind, express thankfulness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bear in mind to use that good thing in seeking pleasures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in getting ridwanullah. So use your beautiful clothes, okay, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Use your good house to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on and so forth. So dear beloved viewers, the first objective for a Muslim to spend his wealth is spending it in lawful and good things, and observing those items which I have mentioned, which is number 1, you spend on what is halal and good. Number 2, you show gratitude to Allah. Number 3, you avoid waste, israf. Number 4, you use that item or that energy or that good thing you have in pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not in disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or spreading mischief on the earth. Inshallah, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue with objective number 2 on wealthy spending in Islamic perspective.
إلى من يجمع المال ويلقى فيه أهوالا سنون العمر ماضية وكأس الموت قد سالا